Farmageddon is not protected in a few years between Iowa State and Kansas State, but should we even be calling it Farmageddon? And should we stop the count trying to get this game past it? I'll tell you why right here on Locked On College Crossover.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, hit me with that beat. Nick gets a Locked On College Crossover Farmageddon conversation, not Farmageddon Friday, right here in the middle of the week between Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Cyclones. And yes, why we having a Farmageddon conversation? The game just happened. Well, there's plenty to talk about. We're going to dive into that episode right here. First, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Nick, Farmageddon, obviously a great game in Dublin. You guys got the win 24-21. We're not going to dig into that much farther in that, at least for this moment. We'll get into it in the second segments, third segments, but what we need to discuss here, and I'm not trying to evade the loss. That's not what I'm getting at. What we need to talk about is something much more important, and that's the future of Farmageddon. Or dare I say we even use that moniker, Nick, because it sounds like the athletic departments, the Big 12 Conference, ESPN, not sure which ones, doesn't like the fact that we used Farmageddon. Consider it the Crackle Barrel logo, throwing away the old man on the barrel, and we're going to a simple logo of just Iowa State versus Kansas State, move away the moniker of Farmageddon. It's just an interesting thing here. You had an opportunity to continue to push this rivalry, and we said about it multiple times when we were talking about this game leading up to Dublin on Saturday, how this rivalry needs to be protected. 118 years. Now it's 50-4 is the record now for Iowa State taking the lead here. You know, it's just one of those rivalries that needs to be protected, and the Big 12 sounds like they want nothing to do with it. In Dublin, Nick, there was a conversation between Gene Taylor and Jamie Pollard and Brett Yormark. I'll get to that in a minute. But before we talk about that conversation, I got to get you talking here. What's your thoughts about Farmageddon?
Just the game in general or the rivalry? Because the game,
hold on to the game was good. Great. Yeah,
the game was awesome. But this rivalry, I don't love the way that this is being treated. I don't understand. Like, why is everyone so against this? It starts with the rivalry no longer being protected, and now we're having conversations of, well, let's just take the name away too. Like, what? This does not really compute to me. Like, this is one of the most, and we talked about this on a Farmageddon Friday. What was it, ranked 63rd or something ridiculous in the top 100 rivalries? That's just pure disrespect in and of itself. We broke down every reason why those rivalries were ranked the way they were, and every single one, it was like, okay, Farmageddon is like top 10 here, top 10 here, really good reason here, really good like, why did it get the disrespect there too? So I don't understand what this is all about, and a lot of people don't even know about this rivalry. This is what a lot of people just forget about.
Yeah, let's break this whole narrative down right here about Farmageddon not being used. They didn't want the moniker attached to it, and where it really started off, and this kind of all stemmed off early on Tuesday, and it stemmed from the conversation from the athletic directors with Brent Yormark in Dublin before the game, I believe on Friday, but it's been going for a couple days now, and we're starting to really get to the bottom of it, and it sounds pretty egregious. Honestly, it sounds pretty egregious, a little bit more on your side, on the Jamie Pollard side than Gene Taylor, but I think it's still both sides. I'll talk to what I mean by that in just a minute here. I'm not trying to point fingers, but I think you'll understand what I'm getting at in just a second. But first, on the ESPN College Game Day podcast, that Reese Davis holds, then, we didn't have game day in Dublin, but we did have a game day podcast. Go figure after that. And he talked about how the Big 12 and the institutions, so make sure we keep those two in mind, that did not want the Farmageddon moniker attached to it. And he said, quote, "We got a directive that some powers that be, I guess from the institutions and perhaps from the conference, that they weren't big fans of the moniker of Farmageddon." What? Why would they not want to use one of the coolest names in any rivalry? I mean, when you're talking about Big 12 rivalries, you got Farmageddon, you got the Sunflower Showdown, you got the Holy War. Like, those are some of the big three that you think of. Farmageddon wins the cake by a mile when you're thinking of just those names, right? And you don't want to use that moniker. Absolutely insane to me. Is it because it's not a protected rivalry, a game that has been played every year since 1917, might I add? What is this? What do you think their reason is that they don't want to put that moniker on one of the best rivalries in college football?
I don't know. I do wonder if it is partially because of the fact that it's not protected. There is maybe some of that. I don't know if it's like it would have some sort of negative connotation. I don't feel like it does. I feel like it's just cool. Like that's just the way that I look at it. And I think you're exactly right when it comes to, I mean, you could argue that it's one of the top rivalry names in the nation, like of all of the names ever. Cyhawk is probably up there because it's kind of our thing a little bit, so it's a little biased there. The Iron Bowl holds a lot of weight, but it's like not a really. It doesn't even compute in the coolness factor that Farmageddon has. I don't know what the reasoning would be, other than just like they don't want it. Like, what is that even? Like, that's not even a reason.
Yeah. So we'll dive deeper in here because at first it sounded like ESPN didn't want it. Then Reese Davis came up and says, no, it's the Big 12 and the programs involved, meaning Iowa State and Kansas State. So then you had to hear from the Big 12 and from the programs involved, and that's what you heard from Kansas State. We got a response from Kansas State, assuming it's from the office of Gene Taylor, and it says, quote, we recognize that the term Farmageddon is popular among fans and media, but have never officially adopted the phrase internally as a means to promote the series. That being said, we have never discouraged anyone externally from using the slogan and fully understand and embrace the benefits of the moniker. First, before I get your thoughts on this, because this is a loaded kind of statement here, there has been multiple people posting on this quote, tweeting on this quote itself, and showing Kansas State's football social media pages from 2011, 2014 using the word Farmageddon. So that alone just kind of shows they're full of baloney.
Well, and even if they weren't, like I don't have anything against maybe the school not fully accepting a rivalry term. Like I'm okay with that. Is how I'm trying to say this. If they're not going to say like anything outward, like this is not the name of the rivalry, we will not call it this. There's definitely been instances of the past of universities like making it a point of this is not what we're doing. Like it's associated with our school. We don't want it associated with our school. I think that's everybody can think of an instance of that. I'm okay with them being like, look, you guys can call it this all you want. Marketing, like we might, do something like that, but we are not like really internally. That's not what we're like hanging up on the walls. And like, I know internal doesn't necessarily mean inside of the building. Like it's kind of just in the organization, but I'm okay with that. I'm very curious to hear about the Iowa State side of things though.
Yeah, there's not really much for it. That's actually the sides for it. There's not really anything, at least to my knowledge, that has been put out by Iowa State. And that makes me wonder, has this more of a Jamie Pollard issue? The fact that we're not hearing a statement from Kansas State and or excuse me, from Iowa State, the fact that they're not making anything of this, does that show that maybe Iowa State is pushing the needle of not really wanting this around? Of course, the protected rivalries in the Big 12 are not much. Kansas State has one when it comes to KU as a protected rivalry. There's not many other protected rivalries in the conference. Iowa State doesn't have one. When you went back to this conversation between your Mark, Gene Taylor, and Jamie Pollard in Dublin, I believe it was from Go Power Cat, Tim Fitzgerald, that asked the question, talking about, are they going to renew this rivalry? Jamie Pollard sounded pretty confused and really had no idea if they even had any protected rivalries or not. And then they beat it around the bush saying, well, we'll just return to that at a later date, kind of getting us to forget about it when the season moves on so they can just move on from it. I get it with realignment. I understand that, Nick. Realignment comes in, and maybe you think that you put yourself in a better or worse situation if you have multiple games you always have to play against each other. If Kansas State always has to play KU, an up-and-coming program right now, if they always have to play Iowa State, a team that they can't beat over the last 4 years, I mean, that could put Kansas State in a bad situation. But I'm telling you right now, I think Farmageddon needs to continue every single year. It needs to be a protected rivalry. And the fact that the athletic directors are kind of pushing away from it, I think is a huge middle finger to the fans.
I feel the same way. I know a lot of Iowa State fans aren't the biggest fans of Jamie Pollard. I think he's done a lot of great things. I certainly do. Campbell, Otzelberger, like two huge names, turned both of their programs kind of right around, if you ask me. But there are fans out there that aren't the biggest fans of Jamie Pollard, and I know why. As far as like what their reasoning is, this one to me goes in the bucket of what are we doing? Why? Like literally, what is It's actually like a historic thing. Like, this is a real deal. 1917. Like, that's a ridiculous number. How many things can you think of that are from 1917? Probably less than 5. There might be a bakery near you, or perhaps a pizza shop near you from 1917. Proud to be in business 100 years. They put that sign up for a reason, And so to move away from this, conference realignment, like, even on top of that, though, these games are so good. They always make national media. Like, that's got to be worth something.
1917 is World War I, just to put that in perspective. I mean, absolutely insane. Last thought here before we move on. I don't understand if this is an Iowa State issue and not a Kansas State issue. I think it's a both problem, but I think it might be leaning more towards the Jamie Pollard side, just from the outside looking in. If that is the case, it's so shocking to me. I could maybe understand it more on the Kansas State side because Matt Campbell's 5-2 against Chris Kleiman. Matt Campbell has owned this rivalry for the last 7 years. You're hearing it from the Kansas State guys saying that conversation. If Kansas State wanted to get out of this rivalry, you'd kind of almost say, well, that tracks. That kind of makes sense. You don't want to be putting yourself in a bad situation. But if you're Pollard, why would you want to do that? I mean, this is the nickname itself is absolutely perfect. It's great for marketing. I mean, the amount of t-shirts you can put on. I mean, Busch Light for farmers. I mean, the cans are perfect for Farmageddon just right now happening, right? Yeah. True growing brands, potential for, marquee matchups that could be happening in week 0 and in Arlington this season. And for Iowa State, as I mentioned, you typically win the game in the last decade. What do you have to lose if you're Iowa State trying to get rid of this protected rivalry and get rid of the moniker, one of the coolest monikers in college football?
Yeah, we've gotten away from the idea that we're just losing the name and focused more on the rivalry itself, which I think both are very valid points. The only argument that I could possibly think of is that Kansas State is not a high quality program, and that's just not true. I mean, that's just literally not the case, in my opinion. So I agree. They're kind of missing out on the business side without the t-shirts and the, the whole thing we could do with the marketing. We did go to Dublin. That's worth something. I don't think it was originally supposed to be a Farmageddon game over there. But yeah, I don't, a lot of this just doesn't make sense to me. Like, literally, what are we doing?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. All right. You are the only team in the conference that has a win right now. So it's safe to say that we need to have this conversation. What will it take for Iowa State to dethrone Arizona State for a Big 12 championship in 2025? Let's do that next on this Locked On College crossover, Farmageddon. See that moniker? We used it. But first, this Locked On College crossover is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up with leaving money on the table. That's when Monarch Money comes in. It's a personal CFO, and it just gives you all the financial tools you need in one spot. Perfect interface, easy to use, and you can put that on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives, and with busy lives, that's definitely something you and I, Nick, have every single day. I mean, we're fighting over monikers. That's how busy we are at the moment. The research you have to do to fight about monikers. If you've put off organizing your finances, well, Monarch is for you. It does the heavy lifting. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear visual data, and get smart categories of your spending, and finally feel free and in control of your money. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Nick, I'm also going to tell you that today's episode, you know what it is? It's brought to you by FanDuel. That's it. NFL season, it's almost here. We're talking right now, and yesterday 53-man rosters were set. Some surprises. Saw some surprises out there. I definitely did. A couple of releases. We saw some people demanding trades. It's going to be a fun NFL season. And if you are ready for the NFL season and you want to make sure that you're ready for kickoff, here's a can't miss offer for me from FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if that $5 bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. This $300, this is more than I think we've said all season long. Even when the Super Bowl was happening, I think it was only $150. So this is the bet to take right now. So check out FanDuel. I mean, it was Futures Day just happened, but that doesn't mean just because if you missed out there, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be heading to FanDuel. So check it out right now. If you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app today by visiting FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com, your place for your first $5 bet. $300, Nick.
A lot.
Iowa State defeats Kansas State 24-21 in Dublin. And we'll definitely get your thoughts on this game. And it was a fun game in Dublin. It was monsoon in the first half, and then it turned into paradise for the Cyclones when the game was over, because they moved to 1-0 in the Big 12 conference. This hurts for me saying out loud, believe me. But you're moving to 1-0 in the conference, and you deserve your flowers. You absolutely do. Hey, I said at the beginning of this entire offseason, we were talking this game was going to be a coin flip. That's what it turned out to be. It turned out to be the greatest game that Dublin's ever seen in the eyes of college football. But here's the question. What will it take for Iowa State to overtake Arizona State? Last year you have to wipe down that 45-19 beat down. And Arizona State didn't have their star wide receiver in Jordan Tyson playing from their injuries, right? He's back this year. Sam Levitt's back this year. There's no Cam Scadaboo, so I guess you can say, thank you for that, because he was an absolute dog in the Big 12 last year. But what will it take? What does this team have differently than they did last year in the Big 12 championship game that they fell to going into this year, so they can maybe potentially get themselves back to Arlington? What does this team possess to take that top notch?
I see your angle here. You lose the Farmageddon matchup over in Dublin. You just immediately bring up the beatdown from last season. Well, look,
I gotta humble you somehow.
You asked the question, and I was asked this on my channel the other day, so I appreciate everyone who leaves a comment, because we read them all, you and I both, don't we? And I think that there's things that Iowa State does really well, and there's things that Iowa State needs to get better at before we were able to dethrone Arizona State kind of as this reigning champion. The first one that immediately comes to mind is we have to stop giving up enormous pass plays. Like, we can't give up 2 bombs, for touchdowns in these games. If you're like in this one, it worked out because we effectively held Kansas State to 7 outside of that. If you give up 2-3 touchdowns and the 2 explosives, that's 35 points. It's hard to win a game when you're giving up 35 points. So I think that's the first one, right? We have to stop explosive plays on the defensive side of things. On the offensive side of things, I think we need to see the run game stay developed the entire year. And we need probably Brett Eskelson. It seems like he's kind of the guy right now to step up as a wide receiver option. The reason I'm not bringing up the tight ends, seems like they've got it down pat. Seems like they are completely locked in. They know what's going on. They're blocking well. They're receiving passes really well. And Rocco seems to be in a really good spot. Now, of course, the obvious answer is you need really good quarterback play. I didn't choose that because, right? Like, that's what that needs to happen. But I think the 2 biggest keys, if I had to pick just 2, one on each side of the ball, can't be giving up nukes on defense. We just can't be having that. Kansas State absolutely stayed in that game just because of those nukes. And on offense, we need to keep that rock on the ground. And that's how you win games. Like, a lot of the time is when you're running the ball well, you're winning games.
And who knows if Arizona State's actually going to be the team to beat when it comes down to it, when you guys play it towards the end of the season. Who knows if they're going to be back in that situation. They have one of the toughest schedules in the Big 12 this year. They don't really miss anybody, with the exception of Kansas State, which I do still think is going to be one of the top teams in the Big 12. Just because you lose by 3 to Iowa State in week 0, I don't think doesn't put you in a downward spiral, although what half of my people in the comment sections like to believe. When I am looking at Arizona State's schedule, of course, let's just assume, because we got to give them their flowers. They obviously won the Big 12 last year, that they're going to be one of the top teams in the conference, especially with all their returning roster retention. They do play an SEC team in non-conference, but it is Mississippi State. Take that for what you will. They do have to go to Waco for Baylor. They do have to go and play in Utah. They do have Texas Tech. They do have Houston. They have all those games before they take on Iowa State in Ames, might I add. Yes. Arizona State in Ames towards the end of the season, and that's not going to be a warm day. They're going to be tested either way, whether they're a team that's contending for the Big 12 or they are not. They're going to be tested. The reason I bring up Arizona's schedule is because I want to shift to your schedule. You're heading into your non-conference with South Dakota, Iowa, Arkansas State, mainly the Iowa game. What can that game tell you to tell you if you are going to be ready for the rest of Big 12 play this season? What are you going to be looking for? The other 2 games, of course, an FCS school and a G5 school. Of course, the other big rivalry with Iowa. And this one's in Ames, thankfully.
Yes.
But what does that tell you?
Thankfully, in Ames, this rivalry as of late has a history of the away team winning, so that's not exactly great news.
Right.
And for what it's worth, really quickly, I know we're kind of running out of time segment 2 here, but I don't necessarily think Arizona State's going to be back in the Big 12 title game. I think they're going to be very good this year. I'm not like looking past that game, but I think that this conference is very, very deep. As far as the Iowa game, really in that one, Iowa, it's being alleged that their defense is kind of like not that great, and all of the Cyclone fans out there that are watching this, we'll do a crossover with Condon and we'll get the real scoop on what's going on over there. But that's what I'm hearing. So I normally would put more kind of emphasis into how does the team do against an Iowa defense, because their Iowa defenses are generally very, very tough. But I kind of wonder if is this a little controversial answer here? I think I'm going to say, how do they do in the special teams? Because Iowa seems to be really, really good in special teams this year, obviously with Caden Weegan, the Jet Award winner last year. Can they win the special teams? Because that's a third of the game, and Iowa State struggles there sometimes.
Are you trying to tell me that a game between two schools from Iowa might come down to the punter?
Literally, it might. It actually might.
Would I be shocked? No. Would the world be shocked? Probably not. But it makes some good football. That's when you know football's back, when you get to talk Iowa punters on an episode here on Locked On College Crossover. I'm loving that. And of course, your special teams game, as you mentioned, finding a way to replace Null. I think you did a good job doing that.
Flora.
Flora was great in that as well. All right, let's dive in. Let's continue on here. Of course, you guys had you're in contention to be a Big 12 returner. Not many teams can do that. Arizona State, Iowa State. We mentioned the two in Arlington last year. The last team to return back-to-back, not just win it, but return, 2004, 2005, Colorado, if you're not including Oklahoma or Texas, who are now in the SEC. So a tough task to do. Doesn't mean it can't be done with Iowa State this season. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about the Wildcats, obviously falling in this game. They have a deep path to go, but doesn't mean their trip to Arlington isn't ruled out. We'll talk about that next. How can they bounce back right here on this Locked On College Crossover? But first, Nick, this episode, it's brought to you by Supply House. Bang. When that opening whistle blows on that new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on the doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in business. They might not have an Iowa punter, but they got HVAC and plumbing and electrical needs. If you need parts fast for a project, well, Supply House has that next day delivery. Talk about a game changer. You can find parts and tools using their 3D schematics and save you hours on jobs, and every detail matters. And of course, that's where Supply House comes in. And you can join their free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lowest prices, and a dedicated support line. So visit supplyhouse.com and sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5, all one word, for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com, SHCollege5, and 5 is the number. Real people, real service. Before we dive into this, and Nick's going to take over this thing, I do have an important request for you. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't like, and you can't say Iowa State if you're a Kansas State fan. If you can, you can. You can say anything you want and answer questions about advertising. So go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 Amazon gift cards, $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes below. Thanks for helping out. And Nick, your dice.
Yeah, am I allowed to do that survey? It sounds like a good deal there. No, let's jump right into Kansas State here, because the game against Iowa State, all eyes were on this one, right? And rightfully so. One of the best games maybe in Farmageddon history. I think that it definitely could have been a little bit different. It's not like it was the best game of all time. So the first quarter or so got a little bit sloppy out there. But
hey, I'm a sicko. I loved it.
It was fun. You can't tell me it wasn't fun. It just didn't look great on the box score. Kansas State coming up short at the end of the day. That's really what it's all about, the final score. What were your takeaways in this one? Where did Kansas State really struggle for the Cyclone fans out here? Because I've been telling the Locked On Cyclones listeners, that this is a good team. This Kansas State team, don't look at like this is like, okay, we got to win, whatever. This is a high value win, in my opinion. So where did they mess up and how can they get back to the Big 12 championship before the season's over?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this game so much, and now that it's finally over, it feels like, it's great that it's done, but I feel like we're in the same boat as probably how Campbell and Kleiman and the rest of their staff felt. They prepped for 16 months for this game, and it was over in 60 minutes. And now we're like, well, we talked about this all the entire season, and now we have to move on to the rest of the year. No, we're not ready to do that yet. That's why we're having this crossover. Look, I think you're absolutely right. I think this game was a coin flip. I don't want to make excuses, and I'm not going to, and I'm not going to be an SEC school and make hypotheticals. However, the loss of Dylan Edwards was huge. He was absolutely huge. Losing that at the beginning of the game. I do think this game is differently if he's in there, because the run game was something that Iowa State did a great job at stopping. I don't know if you do that if you have somebody a lot more explosive like Dylan Edwards in the backfield, because the other running backs that were in that situation, Joe Jackson, Devin Rice, weren't really set up for that. And every single coach and player that was talked about in the post-game press conference and on Monday when they returned to Manhattan said that it was hard for them to get in a rhythm in the first half because so many plays were designed for Dylan Edwards. Take that for what you will. Not an excuse, not a cop-out, but just take that for what you will. That was my first takeaway, and I think that's honestly probably the main takeaway of this. They were super aggressive. It didn't always work on fourth down. I think that was probably one of the biggest wins for Iowa State. Iowa State's defensive line got the best of Kansas State's offensive line. I thought that was going to change or be completely different at the first beginning of the game. I think I sent you a text in the first quarter saying your tackles were getting smoked. And it wound up turning the other way around. I mean, it took a minute for your offensive line to adjust, but they wound up actually doing quite well. And in the fourth quarter, it was just all you guys. You guys just took over in the fourth quarter. It was a reason why they went for that questionable fourth down call, because they knew they couldn't stop you on the run. They didn't think they were going to get the ball back with 8 minutes to go. And they were almost correct, because when you guys did finally get the ball back, you guys held it for 6-something minutes, and you never gave the ball back to Kansas State for a chance to score. I do think Kansas State's a good team this year. I think Avery Johnson's going to figure it out. He didn't make any turnovers. That shows a lot of progress from Avery Johnson. That's a huge thing. There was a lot of turnovers in this game. There was a lot of them. Fumbles. None of them came from Avery Johnson, who one of his biggest gripes is of him not being an accurate passer or giving turnovers. He was a 70% completion passer in this one, and he had 0 interceptions. So that alone, I think, is a win. You can take small victories from this for Kansas State in this game, and I think that alone gives you the enough confidence to finish off your non-conference schedule, to get back to Big 12 play, your true Big 12 play, if you will, in quotations, when you're supposed to play it. And hopefully we get to find us playing again in Arlington in December 6th, right? I think that's when it is.
How poetic would it be to go all off season looking forward to Farmageddon, and then we wrap the year up in Arlington with a Kansas State, Iowa State? I would cry. It would be beautiful.
Putting this entire episode full circle here, if they start in week 0 and then the last Big 12 game of the season is Kansas State, Iowa State in Arlington, the moniker of Farmageddon needs to be put on the logo in Arlington, and move over Dr. Pepper. Busch Light needs to come in. I mean, you got to make it happen.
That would be amazing. It's
for farmers. Yeah, it tells me on it every time I take a sip. It's for farmers.
Oh, man. Right, well, that's yes. As far as this Kansas State team, we'll wrap it up real quick for your listeners out there, and for the Iowa State fans that maybe don't think too much of this win. There were a few things I thought Kansas State could have done better, and I'm kind of basically bounced the same question I asked you, or you asked me in the second segment, right back at you. Sure. What does Kansas State need to change in these next few weeks? Because like you said, I think Avery Johnson played very well. I think that there's a lot of upside there. I think if you get Edwards back, like that's in and of itself a huge difference. But for me, it's like, does there need to be an aggression change? Are we going for it on fourth down? Was it maybe the air was heavy? Is that why why were they out there on fourth down so much? Like, what needs to, because you can't lose every game and make it to the Big 12 championship. So something has to change. Is it the opponent, game style? What's going on?
Well, the opponent. That's a funny one. I like that little sly one he brought in there. Look, honestly, I mean, with the exception of maybe adding a little bit more depth and confidence in your offensive line, because I do think the right side of the offensive line was a revolving door in the first game, and you're not always going to have the right questions, especially with George Fitzpatrick, who was ruled out. For the record, George Fitzpatrick was supposed to be your left tackle. John Pastore took over that spot. He was the highest rated offensive lineman in the entire country for week 0, according to PFF. So the guy who was replacing the starting left tackle was the best offensive lineman. So when George Fitzpatrick comes back and they both are the tackles on the team moving forward, and hopefully that's sooner than later, hopefully when Big 12 play restarts, I think the offensive line's in a good situation. I think when Dylan Edwards comes back, they're in a good spot. So I'm not too concerned about the offense. What I am concerned about is the depth that was tested on the defensive line. They were so gassed in the fourth quarter. I mean, they didn't help that the offense only had 8 offensive plays for Kansas State in the fourth quarter. I mean, Matt
every
Campbell
time you scored, it was one play.
Yeah, and when you guys had the ball, you did a great job moving the clock, and you did exactly what you need to do to win the football game. But I will say that was tested. Now, there were some key injuries out, Ryan Davis, Malcolm Alcorn Crowder, that would have helped that depth, but you had multiple guys that were defensive linemen that were playing 50 snaps that you should only want them playing 35 just for the sake of not being gassed. And if you can make that change and still have the type of performance that you need to stop the run, I think that's probably what I'll be looking at over the next couple of weeks as we prepare to get back into Big 12 play. And then you got to put all eyes on, at least in the eyes of the media, right? I mean, you can't overlook any game if you're the actual coaches or players. I understand that. But in my eyes, all eyes are on Baylor and Waco. That's your first true test after this Iowa State matchup. If you can prove a statement, and who knows what Baylor is right now. They got a really tough task on Friday against Auburn. They could be the Big 12's heroes to start the season, beating an SEC team. If that starts, then we'll see what happens. But I think Baylor is what you have to put all eyes on. Then you got to make sure you can take care of Utah on the road. Of course, who knows what Texas Tech is. If you can get through those 3 tough games without a loss, maybe even just one of them, and you find yourself at 7-2 and the season's over, hopefully you can get to a tiebreaker. Of course, Kansas and Lawrence is a tough one. The streak's on the line. If you can make that happen, get to 7-2, which is still doable. You still got one loss to roll with. Then I think you'll see yourself back in Arlington. And I would not be shocked if it's these 2 teams.
Yeah, me either. And I just can't reiterate enough. Kansas State is a very good team and a team capable of making it to the Big 12 championship. And I think more so than that, if they do make it back there, it sounds like they're going to be very tough competition. So that's an exciting game on the horizon. How poetic would it be to round out the season with Farmageddon? Thank you all for making it to this point in the episode of our Farmageddon basically recap with some news in there. Be sure to hit subscribe down below on both these channels so we can prove that this is the greatest rivalry in all of sports. Christian, any last words?
Yeah, it's another big moment for Locked On, folks. College football fans, Locked On, Fire TV presents College Football Kickoff. It's your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll from Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation along with 2-time AP Coach of the Year, Gary Patterson. How about that? Former college star Jesse Holley, and local Locked On experts like you and I will be on the show every now and again. College football preview only Locked On can do. So catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season. You're only going to find that on Fire TV. Let's get out of here. Thanks for listening. This has been and always will be Locked On College Crossover with the best moniker in the world, Farmageddon.